As I'm recording this, it's the beginning of the new moon, the first new moon in January, which also means we have a new goddess of the month. The one that we're going to be working with in this lunar month is the Goddess Brigid, or some people pronounce it Brigid. She is the Celtic goddess of healing and storytelling, crafting, and many other things. So I hope you join me in this episode as we learn more about the Goddess Brigid and how we can connect with her. We'll talk about some of her stories. And in fact, I have a special bonus as part of this episode. I wrote a short story about Brigid, and I will be sharing that with you as part of this podcast episode. So I hope you stay tuned and learn more about Brigid. Welcome. Dancing with the Goddess is how we move through and experience life as modern mystic women. I believe anyone can be a modern mystic woman and experience awe, beauty, and magic in our daily lives. I'm Tora Arishnaimu, goddess mystic, author, and creative. Join me as we discover who we are meant to be, explore different modalities for self-improvement and transformation, and reawaken to our goddess magic and feminine divine selves. I invite you to dance with the goddess with me. Here's today's episode. The Goddess Brigid comes to us from the Celtic cultures. And Celtic is more than just the British Isles. It included a wide area in Northern Europe. And Brigid was a primary goddess for all of those countries and all of those cultures. Because of this, her name is pronounced in many different ways. For instance, in Ireland, you'll hear her called Brigid, Brigit, Brigit, or Brigid. In Scotland, she's called Bride. In Welsh, she's called Farayat, and I hope I pronounced that right. I don't speak Welsh, so I'm trying as best as I can on that. Whether you call her Brigid, Brit, Brigitte, Brigid, Bride, or some other variation, she's still the same goddess. The same goddess shows up for us in many, many different ways. Just because she shows up to you in a certain way doesn't mean that's the only way that she shows up. If you choose to start working with Brigid or Brigid, I highly suggest connecting with her in meditation and asking her how she wants you to pronounce her name and connect with her in that way. Because there's many pronunciations and none of them are wrong. And they're all the same goddess. As more and more people are connecting with paganism and witchcraft, they're starting to get this. They haven't fully deconstructed from patriarchy, and they're starting to say, this is the one and only way to connect with X goddess. This is the only way to connect with Brigid. This is the only way to pronounce her name. She only shows up in this way. That's very, one, patriarchal, of the one and only true way. Two, it's very much hubris on our part as humans to declare what a deity is and is not. Three, it's very ethnocentric because we're not taking in account the cultures and beliefs of other people. It's very racist. We're saying our way isn't the only way, especially if you're white. So let's not do that. And I certainly don't do that in any of my teachings and videos. I teach you connect with the goddess in the way that you need to connect with, or she will connect with you in the way that you need her to connect with you. I call her Brigid. So that's what I will be using in this episode. Brigid's name in Gaelic can be translated as fiery arrow, bright one, or exalted one. You'll see a lot of her epitaphs are Brigid the Bright One. And that's just pulling in her name and what it means. Some of this comes from the myth of her birth. It is said that when she was born, fire burst from her head, creating the first sunrise. And her mother is the goddess Danu from the Irish Tuatha, and I know I'm not pronouncing that right, the original peoples of Ireland. So in her birth, we get that she's a fire goddess. She's connected with fire. She has fire coming out of her head. She's usually depicted with red gold hair, pulling in that fire element. But Brigid is an unusual goddess that not only is she connected with fire, she's also connected with water. It's said that wherever she walked and placed her staff, a healing spring would well up. And these wells were filled with sacred healing water. To this day, you can go to many of these wells around Ireland and Britain and Scotland, and they are known to be healing waters, that people have experienced miraculous healing from this water. The well at Glastonbury is one of her wells. So she's both fire and water, which has some interesting connotations because usually fire and water don't mix. But fire heats water. Water cools fire. And in her three qualities, she has many qualities, but the three qualities that we'll be talking about mainly are healing, crafting, and storytelling. And fire and water figures in all three of those qualities. The fire of inspiration for storytelling, and including the water of emotions, because any good story connects to your emotions and it evokes that emotional response. Then you have fire also relates to healing in cleansing those things that are the diseases that are causing the dis-ease, the unhealthiness. But the water also cleanses that. So you can combine both fire and water, or one or the other when you're healing with Brigid, for whatever it works for what you're doing. I know my hands get really hot when I'm doing healing work because you're generating a lot of energy for healing, and that energy is fire energy. And then with crafting, that's not just simply metal crafting. It's crafting your life. It is crafting jewelry. It is crafting art. It's crafting music. And you need fire for that inspiration, that passion to be doing that crafting. The water, again, for connecting with your audience if you're doing something like music or art, and connecting with their emotions or writing. So her fire and her water connects with everything that she does. And we can connect that way and see those elements slightly different than by seeing them separate. One of the reasons that we know so much about Brigid than we do many other Celtic goddesses is because she was so ingrained in Celtic daily life. I saw a TikTok video about this recently where she was talking about how much patriarchy has seeped into what spirituality means, even in the paganism and the Wicca, witchcraft, goddess spiritualities. We tend to equate spirituality with going out onto the mountain. And I talk about this a little bit in episode 13 about being self-full. We forget that living our daily life can be a spiritual experience. Some of my greatest spiritual experiences have been in my body. It's not separating out of my body. That's a very patriarchal point of view, that we need to separate from the body, separate from society, separate from our families in order to be spiritual. From a goddess feminine point of view, we need to be in our bodies. We're taking care of our families as part of our spirituality. This is reflected in some of the things that Brigid ruled over. The Celts considered there were 3 skills that every person needed to have to function fully in their society. And those were poetry, healing, and smithcrafting. Exactly what we're talking about, her qualities. And in poetry, that included inspiration and divination. Divination is definitely a spiritual activity. So is inspiration. Healing was hearth and fertility. Hearth is your home. We heal in our homes. We heal with our families. Fertility is continuing the population, continuing our spirituality. If you've been a mother, if you've carried a child in your womb, we share part of our spirit with our child, and they with us. There's a reason there's such a bond and connection with our children. Science is even now showing that mothers absorb some of the cells and DNA of the children that they carry. So there's this deep spiritual bond with our children. So mothering and taking care of them, having that compassion, the water element, having that passion to take care of them, to want the best for them, the fire element, is all part of what Brigid ruled over. Smithcrafting was metalworking and all sorts of crafts, which included all womanly arts of dyeing, weaving, midwifery, brewing. Brewing beer was a woman's art. The men didn't brew beer, it was the women. And the beer was seen as sacred ambrosia for the gods, especially like mead. She ruled over herbal arts, herbalism, healing. Before there was allopathic medicine and synthetic drugs, you healed with herbs. And one of the ways you healed with herbs was through creating a tisane or an herbal tea. You created a tincture with the fire of alcohol. You could create poultices with that heat. You could create smudging to draw out those evil spirits, which we now know some of those evil spirits, bacteria and viruses, you could smudge. Smudging is not just white sage. You can smudge, and they did smudge with garden sage, rosemary, thyme. Thyme is known now as a very good antiviral and antibacterial, as well as lavender. All of those can be used as smudging. We don't have to appropriate Native American culture and use white sage to smudge for healing or for cleansing. We can use other herbs for that. Brigid ruled over agriculture. Agriculture is a woman's art. It was the gatherers, the women, who developed farming and agriculture. We would not have the civilization we have today without agriculture. Women noticing that if they went to a certain place at a certain time, these things were growing. And they learned that they could plant those seeds and not have to travel all the time and conserve their energy. We know now, too, that women didn't just gather, they were also hunters. That's a subject for another episode. Part of smith crafting and storytelling is music and poetry and stories and bards. She's the patroness of bards, along with Caerdwyn, because that's sharing stories. So pretty much everything that's a womanly art, which means we live comfortably, we have enough food to eat, we have a home and shelter, a fire to cook our food and to stay warm. All of that's womanly arts. And all of that was ruled over by Brigid in the ancient Celtic world. Because of how much she was ingrained in the everyday life, not just spiritual life, but everyday life, she touched everything in Celtic society. Everything. When the Christians invaded, they saw how much Brigid was ingrained into the society. That if they tried to erase Brigid like they did other goddesses and replace them as just heroines, people in stories, that there would be a revolt. She touched so much that they had to find a way to include Brigid into this new religion of Christianity. The way that they did it was morph the Goddess Brigid into the Saint Brigit. So for clarity's sake, as I'm talking about this, when I'm talking about the goddess, I will use the pronunciation Brigid. When I'm talking about the saint, I'll use the pronunciation Brigid. Just so we know, are we talking about the goddess or are we talking about the saint? And because of them adopting Brigid as their Saint Brigit, her stories have been preserved as stories of Saint Brigit. Most of Saint Brigit's stories are retellings of the Goddess Brigid's stories. Her sacred ceremonies and her spirituality was also adopted by Saint Brigid. That's why we know so much about it. If they hadn't have done that, Brigid would be like many other deities that were eliminated by Christianity, or tried to be eliminated by Christianity, or diminished by Christianity as just myths and heroes and heroines, not deities. There is one story about Saint Brigit that has nothing to do with the Goddess Brigid. And it's one of those that you go, huh? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, even in your own mythology. Saint Brigit was said to be one of the midwives at Christ's birth, because she's the goddess of midwifery, with the fertility and home and hearth and healing. However, even in the canon of Saint Brigit, her birth date is given as 453 CE, nearly 500 years after the birth of Christ. So how did she attend his birth 500 years before she was supposedly born? One of the interesting things about Saint Brigit, which reflects that she, even as they adopted her, glommed onto her, the Saint Brigit was the one and only female ordained bishop. And she was made the abbess of the Abbey at Kildare. She's the only abbess that we know of that ruled in her own right. She did not have a priest, a bishop, that she reported to. And the Abbey of Kildare, and Kildare means oak grove, is situated on an ancient Druidic site. And this site has been a sacred site of Brigid from time immemorial. So there's no coincidence that the abbey was built on Kildare and made Saint Brigit's Abbey. And the abbesses of Kildare all took the name of Brigid, not only to honor Saint Brigit, but they also believed that she was a reincarnation of the saint. Basically, she was an avatar of the Goddess Brigid. After the abbey was built, there was an eternal flame of Brigids, that it was said that 19 nuns would attend this eternal flame, one each night, and on the 20th night, the saint would come and attend the flame. This is exactly a retelling and reenactment of what was done prior to Christianity. Prior to Christianity, there were 19 priestesses of Brigid who would attend her eternal flame, and on the 20th night, she would guard it. And this continued from time immemorial until 1132 CE. And I do use the Common Era rather than AD, after death, because I'm not Christian. In 1132 CE, Dermot MacMurrough, and I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, wanted a relative to hold the position of power at the Kildare Abbey. The abbess wouldn't have anything to do with it. She would not relinquish her position. She couldn't, as an avatar of Brigid. She would not relinquish her position for political games. MacMurrough was incensed, just like men are, for women to tell him, no, ooh, we can't have that. We can't have this uppity woman to think that she is all that. So MacMurrough ordered his men to invade the abbey, a sacred space that had been sacred for centuries, to invade it, to rape and kill the abbess, and to rape all of the nuns. And in the process of doing this, which of course the men did with glee, they extinguished the sacred flame that had been burning for so many, many years. And it's interesting that right around that time is when we get the Dark Ages. The light of the goddess, the light of Brigid was extinguished and threw the world into darkness. In 1993, 800 years later, 2 nuns relit the light at Kildare, relit Brigid's light. And things have been shifting and changing in society ever since. Don't think it's a coincidence. The goddess Brigid's birthday is said to be on Midwinter's Day. And in our common calendar, we see midwinter as the 1st of February. This is the time when winter is starting to release her hold on the world. And we're seeing some hope of spring. We're seeing crocus and hyacinths starting to bloom and pushing up through the snow even to bloom. In the ancient world, they celebrated midwinter and called it Imbolc, which can be translated to use milk or in the womb. And that was celebrated at the 1st of what we now call the 1st of February. The church changed this celebration to Candlemas, or Saint Brigit's Day. This is the day that all over in the Celtic world, especially in Ireland, they still to this day celebrate Saint Brigit's Day. We'll talk more about Imbolc, what it means, some of the celebrations and stuff in episode 16, when it's closer to Imbolc. But because of this connection with Imbolc and Brigid and Saint Brigit, it's why we're working with her this lunar month. So I am an author. I write stories, I write books, I write fantasy. I also write about the goddess, and I do have a link in the show notes if you're interested. I have a full series out and the start of another series out. First one is an epic science fantasy, Legends of Laerheim, which includes the goddess. They are a theocracy, their society. And the second one is Sentinel Witches, in which a different goddess from around the world features in the story and helps the main character, Catelyn, to defeat the demons that are sent to enslave the world. So if you're interested in those stories, you can find a link to my author website in the show notes. I wrote this story about Brigid, and I would like to share it with you, and I'm making it available for you to download for free on my website, and I will have a link to that in the show notes as well. I invite you to listen to this story and start connecting with the goddess Brigid. Brigid's Fire by Tora Moon. When the world was new, in the land known as the Emerald Isles, the great mother goddess Danu walked the land. Everywhere she went, the people bowed in reverence at her presence. It pleased her to see the villages thriving, cattle in the pastures, and grain in the fields. Children ran and played in the streets, their mothers watching with fondness. The men were brave warriors protecting their people from harm. Delighted with all she saw, Danu decided it was time for her people to take the next step in their growth. Over the summer and autumn, a child grew in her belly, until finally, at midwinter, Danu entered her sacred grove high upon the hill at Kildare. With 9 of her priestesses in attendance, Danu gave birth to a beautiful daughter at sunrise. Flame shot from the baby's head, giving the world its first brightly colored sunrise. Danu named her daughter Brigid, the Bright One. Brigid had hair the color of red-hot flames, eyes as green as the grass, and skin the brown of earth. Danu took the flame from the child's head and placed it on her birth altar. It continued to burn as a bright beacon for the people of the land. The child grew quickly, a delight to her mother, learning all the knowledge and wisdom Danu had to share. Brigid grew to adulthood and learned all she could while sitting at her mother's knee. On Midwinter's Eve, Danu took Brigid into the forest. They stopped in a sacred grove, surrounded by tall, ancient oaks. In the center was a spring bubbling from the depths of the earth. Rocks formed a pool where the water sprung. Mother and daughter sank onto the soft, mossy grass covering the ground, listening to the soft burble of the spring. "Breathe, my beautiful bright one," Danu said. "I have nothing more I can teach you. It is time for you to discover your full potential and become all you are meant to be. I charge you, my darling, to guide my people, teach them how to live in harmony, and share with them gifts I have blessed you with." Brigid bowed her head. "Great Mother, I will do as you ask and share all I know and all I am with our people. I leave with you my sanctuary and give you my 9 priestesses. They will assist you in your task." Danu lovingly cupped her daughter's face and kissed her brow in blessing, then faded into the ether, returning to her palace in the world between worlds. She continued to watch over her people and her daughter from afar, while allowing them to grow and discover life for themselves. Brigid's heart sped, beating a fast staccato. She had never been alone before. Danu had always been at her side. Taking long, deep breaths, Brigid calmed. She sensed a gentle thrum under her feet. Crouching, she placed her hands on the ground, and the thrumming grew louder. She closed her eyes and cocked her head, listening. Her mother's heart beat, slow and steady, like a drum, pulsed deep in the earth. She wasn't alone. Brigid opened her eyes, threw back her shoulders, and strode from the sacred grove. Waiting for her at the edge were 9 priestesses, once belonging to Danu. "Right One," the head priestess said. "Where is the great mother Danu?" "She is in her heavenly palace, but she is also here. Listen. Can you not hear her heartbeat?" The priestess cocked her head, and a moment later joy filled her face. "Yes, I hear her." "Danu has given you to me," Brigid said, folding her hands together in nervousness. Some of these women were much older than she was. Would they follow her? "Will you dedicate yourself to me and follow me as you once did my mother?" As one, they bowed to Brigid. They followed her to the sanctuary at Kildare, where the flame of Breed's birth still burned. On Midwinter's night, the priestesses declared their dedication and allegiance to Brigid. Over the next weeks, as winter gave way to spring, Brigid and her 9 priestesses built a temple around the flame of her birth. Brigid used her magic to cause a hedge to grow around the temple and dedicated the space inside as a sanctuary for women. When all was ready, Brigid fed the flame of her birth until it burned brightly night and day, serving as a beacon to the land the goddess had arrived. Soon, the flame attracted women from their nearby villages to Brigid's sanctuary, where she taught them the women's mysteries. She only allowed women to enter her sacred sanctuary and bask in the presence of her flame. Their cells and DNA absorbed this info and carried the memory of her mysteries and would be passed down from mother to daughter within the womb. From the many women who came to her sanctuary, Brigid chose 10 more to add to her original 9 to become her priestesses. One day, Brigid gathered her 19 priestesses around the altar of her flame. "Sisters," Brigid said, "I charge you to tend my eternal flame and keep its light burning bright. One priestess will tend the flame each night, and on the 20th night I will guard it. Freely teach all who come to the sanctuary what I have taught you. Initiate women into the mysteries on Midwinter's night, the night of my birth." The next day, Brigid, the Bright One, threw her emerald cloak around her shoulders, picked up her rowan staff, and strode from her sanctuary. She traveled throughout the Emerald Isles, and wherever she rested and struck the ground with her staff, a well sprang up from the earth. The water from these wells had the power to heal all manner of disease. One day, while she rested at one of her wells, 2 men afflicted with the horrible disease of leprosy came to the well. "Lady," they said, "we have heard of the healing power of your waters. Can you heal us of this terrible sickness?" Brigid told the first man, Connor, to bathe his companion, Bathan. As Connor did so, Bathan's skin turned back into a healthy color, the disease disappearing as the water sluiced off. Soon, no sign or symptom of the disease remained in Bathan. He immediately fell to his knees at Brigid's feet. "Thank you, Brigid, Bright One, for the miracle," he exclaimed. "Now it is your turn to wash your friend, so that he too may be healed," she said to the healed man. "But if I touch him, I will get the disease again," Bathan said in terror. "I can't risk it." He turned his back on his friend and hurried down the road. He didn't get very far when the familiar pain he thought was gone returned. Bathan stopped in his tracks, raised his hands, and cried in horror. The black, dead flesh of leprosy once more afflicted his hands. He ran back to his friend and discovered Connor healed of the horrible disease. "What is this?" he cried out in amazement. He looked around for the well, but it and the goddess had vanished. Bathan crumbled to the ground, covering his face in his hands. Sobs shook his slender frame. "No! Where did the well go? I'm so sorry, Connor. I should have healed you." Connor knelt beside his friend and wrapped his arms around him, holding him as he shuddered with despair. A long time later, Bathan raised his head, staring into Connor's eyes. "Are you not afraid of getting this disease again?" "No, I have lived with it once. I can live with it again if I must. You need my friendship and my love." The goddess Brigid appeared and smiled at them. She placed a hand on Connor's head. You have learned compassion, and without compassion, you are never truly healed. Take your friend to the well at Kildare. He'll find healing there. The two friends traveled to the well, where Breed's sacred water healed Bathan again. Together they traveled the land, helping others to find healing and compassion. Brigid continued to travel around the Emerald Isles. In each village where she stopped, she freely shared the gifts Danu had given her, teaching new skills to all those who wished to learn them. She taught the craft of working with fire. She taught smith crafting, making tools of iron to help the people work more efficiently. She taught the art of melting gold and silver, creating jewelry and sacred adornments for their bodies. She taught the women the ways of the earth, which herbs to use for different ailments, and the skill of agriculture and harvesting. One day, a group of women approached Brigid as she sat next to the fire drinking mead. An older woman stepped forward. "Goddess," she said, "you have taught us so much. Our heads can't hold it all. Even collectively, we can't remember everything you taught us about the herbs and their properties." "Bring me a clean hide," Brigid bade the woman. A young girl darted from the hall, returning shortly with a large, well-tanned hide. Brigid placed the hide on a nearby table, then reached into the fire and pulled a burning brand from it. Blowing the flame out, she formed marks on the hide with the charcoal. "These marks stand for the words that you speak," she explained. "By learning what the marks mean, you can write down all the things you have learned." And so Brigid shared the gift of writing with Danu's people. She taught a special group of men and women to sing and create poetry and stories. To these bards, she tasked them to spread the word of her gifts to all the land, especially to those small hamlets she couldn't personally visit. Finally, on midwinter's morning, Brigid returned to the place of her birth. "Goddess Brigid, you're home!" her priestesses cried with joy. They invited everyone in the area to celebrate. In honor of her fire, they lit candles and placed them in every room of their homes. The fire and candles reminded them that even in the dark and cold of winter, the hope of spring still lives. Ages passed, and the people continued to grow and use the gifts that Brigid brought to them. Each year on Midwinter's Day, they gathered together to light the fires of Brigid to give them hope of the coming spring. The priestesses kept the flame burning bright in her sanctuary at Kildare. After many thousands of years, a darkness came to the land. The invaders brought with them a new god, an unforgiving god. They turned Brigid into one of their saints, and her priestesses became this new god's nuns. And still, they kept Brigid's fire burning. They kept the sacred sanctuary a space for women only, even against the wishes of the new church's leaders. Until there came a time when the Pope ordered the abbess of Kildare to allow him into her abbey. She refused, for no man had ever entered the sacred sanctuary. Infuriated, he ordered his men to storm the abbey and to rape and kill the abbess, and to rape all the other nuns to show them their place. The men did so with glee, and in the process extinguished the flame of Brigid that had been burning for so very, very long. But the people still remembered the goddess Brigid and gathered together in secret at midwinter to light their candles. Now for the hope of spring, of a new age, when this darkness would pass, as the darkness of winter also passes. The darkness is lifting. The hope of spring is here. The eternal flame of Brigid has been relit in the Abbey of Kildare. So light your candles, my sisters, at midwinter's day, and look for the fire in the sky at sunrise, for the flame of the Goddess Brigid, the bright one. And know the goddess is alive. Listen. Listen. Can you hear her heartbeat beneath your feet? The goddess is alive. She's in our hearts. We can make the changes. Spring is here. We are seeing the winter of patriarchy starting to give way as more and more of us awaken to our feminine divine presence. And I invite you, if you want to be part of this awakening, to be part of this hope of spring, to join me in creating the community of Dancing with the Goddess Sisterhood. In this community, we share stories of the goddess. We share our personal experiences with the goddess, as well as things that we know, that we've learned, that we've studied. I don't know everything. And I love learning from other women. When we have a large enough community, we'll start doing full moon circles of connecting to the goddess of the month in community. And we'll do this on Zoom so that no matter where you are in the world, you can share in this sisterhood of connecting with and attuning to the goddess and awakening to your own feminine divine presence. The Goddess Brigid reminds us that our spirituality can be and is part of who we are and part of our lives. Working with Brigid and all of the womanly arts that she is the goddess of, the patroness of, can remind us that in our daily care of our families, in our daily care of ourselves, of the people we love, our pets, and care of the world, that those are spiritual activities, that we don't need to separate ourselves and go onto a mountaintop or become homeless in order to spiritually serve. The Goddess Brigid helps us to remember that our stories are important. The stories of our lives are important. The stories that we write and share with other people are important. Our women's voices are important, and we need them. This is how we change the world, is through women sharing their experiences, sharing their voices. We're seeing this as more women share their experiences on places like TikTok, and women are going, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who experiences this. Other women experience this. Oh, there are communities of women that I can join and be part of. I don't have to be isolated as patriarchy wants me isolated. Working with the Goddess Brigid's fire can help ignite our inspiration, our psychic gifts, our divination, our healing gifts, whether that's hands-on or herbal or sound or however you do healing and you share your healing gifts. It can ignite our creativity, whether that's jewelry making, weaving, poetry, music, stories, writing stories, storytelling. All of that is part of Brigid. And in that fire that motivates us and inspires us to do these things is also her healing waters. That as we share our stories, we heal ourselves and we heal other women. As we share in our gifts, whatever those are, we are healing ourselves and we are healing other women. We are sharing our compassion and our empathy. That's what makes us different from spiritual men, is our spirituality is a place of community and of empathy and of compassion. That's where we find our strength, is in community, in our spiritual communities and our communities that we live in. There really is no difference. And with that, we are complete. May you dance with the Goddess Brigid in love and joy. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode and it deepened your dance with the Goddess. Please subscribe to our channel, like and share the video, and feel free to comment. This helps more women find our show. To support the show, please donate to buymeacoffee.com DWG-pod. Your donations help support the cost of hosting, editing, and production of the podcast. We appreciate your support. May the rest of your day be amazing, and may you dance with the Goddess in love and joy.